Good evening. Is it evening yet? It's still afternoon. Been a busy day. How are you all? And we're doing well. Thank you all for coming out today to meet the three finalists and hear the public interview of the three finalists, and then hopefully you'll stick around later to have a more informal meet and greet where you can ask some questions that you are interested in asking the candidates. They have been going strong since about noon. Today we had two community panels and the lead team panel. They'll meet with more staff members tomorrow. So this is, mid stages of this process. Your input and thoughts are very important, so we look forward to hearing them from you. And with that, I'll turn it over to Vice Mayor Hill.
Good afternoon. So we have the first of our three candidates is joining us, and I'll let him go ahead and introduce himself. But Michael Malinoff, and we're going to start with just a 5-minute overview of why you're qualified for this position and why you're specifically interested in doing this here in Charlottesville.
Thank you. Thank you, Charlottesville, and thank you, Council, for inviting me. I'm Michael Malinoff. To give you a little bit of background of who I am, I think the resume is out, so I'm going to gloss over that a little bit and tell you a little bit about me as a person. I'm a 29-year professional in local and county government. I am what they call a credentialed member of the International City County Management Association. That's sort of a parent organization for these forms of government and local government professionals. And I'm credentialed, meaning I take 40 years of continuing education every year so I can stay sharp in what I do. I have been a city manager in the city of Annapolis. I've been a city manager in the city of Newport, Rhode Island, and most recently I was the county administrator in Charles County, Maryland. Three very historic communities. The two cities, very similar to here in size, in demographics, and population. So I think I come with the kind of background and the type of community that you are in a very special place to jump in and be able to add and help. In terms of who I am one of 7 children. I have 6 sisters, and I'm right in the middle. And I was telling them earlier that kind of prepared me for this career more than anything. Because when you're the middle of 6 sisters, and they're all very strong and they're leaders, and I survived and I learned a lot from them. So I've kind of continued with that kind of career. I have 3 children. My oldest, Andrew, is working for a nonprofit in the city of Baltimore having to do with education for at-risk children called THREAD. He's a volunteer organizer, and he connects people who can mentor with students who need help achieving either completion, college, or a trade. My middle daughter, Jennifer, had been working for the Park Service, Outer Banks sea turtles. She's a naturalist traveling in Central America right now, Costa Rica, with one of your residents. I don't know whether her parents are here today, but Kaylee Carroll's her friend, and she's out there traveling the world, and that's my middle daughter, Jennifer, and my youngest, Natalie, is in her 2nd year of art school in Philadelphia. And my partner, Kathy, is a teacher in inner city Baltimore at a Montessori charter school, and she teaches 1st grade through 3rd grade and has probably the toughest job of us all, but really loves it. And that's me in a nutshell.
Thank you. Please discuss the importance of building relationship with community members. In the past, what have you done to build those relationships, and do you perceive any challenges building relationships in our community?
Well, I think the fundamental way this form of government works is your elected officials are elected as a representative of the community, and they hire somebody like me to manage the operations and be an arm of that. And so for me to succeed, I have to get to know the community, become a part of the community and work with different elements of the community, whether that's for housing advocacy, business groups, environmental. And so I have a breadth of experience in that and quite a interest in that. I'm, as I've said often in this job, I'm interested in all but a master of none, and I think that takes being a good city manager or county administrator, is that you have a multitude of interests, but you can engage on a variety of levels, but you're not necessarily mired down into each and every one. In terms of your community, I don't think that would be a struggle at all. I know, and that August, 2 days in August, a year and a half ago, that there was a tremendous and horrible thing that happened here, and I'm very aware of that, and I'm very aware of how that's brought your community up in issues of long history of inclusion, economic and housing opportunity, but I also know it's part of the national dialogue and worldwide dialogue too. And with an election coming up, it's not going to go away. So I think it's going to be a challenge to continue to be engaged, but it's not something that I'm at all shy about or uneducated or unable to do.
Yep, sure. Thanks a lot. Wanted to ask you about the topic of transparency in government, kind of just as generally your interest in this, your experience, what you think you might bring in this role to that, that principle.
Thank you. Transparency is a fundamental part of what I've done throughout my career. I have some documents I brought with me, and I know it's hard for you to see, but one is a monthly report that I have done throughout my career that is both analytical and allows the department directors to provide a narrative, and that's provided to the council as well as the community, and the analytics associated with it is data-based on the goals and objectives that the council comes up with the department directors, and a dashboard is associated with that to provide a kind of a measure of where we are and how well we're doing, whether it's finances, whether it's policing, whether it's housing, whether it's lead times for public transportation. So that's something I've done my entire career, and I know we're in a media-savvy world and in a country, and so I always look at this document to be evolving and improving and reflective of what the community wants. Transparency goes both ways, though, and it's an internal thing, too, and this is something that I've done as well, which is an internal document to staff, employees of the government to provide information on things that are going on in the government, ideas from the county council, city council, commissioners, what have you. I just came from a county, so that's why I mentioned that. And so I think that's another tool that I use. And I think the data's available, and there's a lot of really useful tools out there to help facilitate transparency that may not be utilized now, but I will guarantee you your police department, fire department, public works, recreation, and finance use analytics all the time and can be provided quite easily.
Thanks.
Thank you for being here. So our community attracts investors and buyers who can afford any price on housing, all of which inflates our land values, our assessments, and ultimately our tax revenue. Yet despite these raising revenues, we find ourselves still needing to spend more on housing, infrastructure, schools, and consequently raise taxes. Have you faced this kind of situation before? How would you assess a situation like this? And can you think of ways to lessen the tax burdens while at the same time still meeting our obligations?
The short answer to that is I have. If you've done the job that I've done for as long as I have, you face that quite frequently. I think the first thing you need to do is to not move any options off the table. I think what often happens in the age of no taxes or we're not going to do this is it immediately boxes you in and you don't have solutions. So I'm not going to start off by saying, no new taxes, none of that. In fact, in Charles County, most recently, when I was saying earlier, I was kind of playing chicken with the commissioners on when I would start because I was going, did you pass the budget yet? Because can I come afterwards? And they said, nope, we're going to wait until you get here. And so when I got there, they said there was a shortfall, and we immediately had to address issues having to do with the funding of our operations as well as raising additional revenues. And I've done that. Now, in terms of your community, I know you have a phenomenal, you have a good tax base, about $6.8 billion. You have about $550 million of on capacity. And I've read recently an analysis benchmarking this community with others in the state. And I think what you do when you make those kinds of decisions, and what people like me do, is provide you with the information, data to better understand what you're doing. And for example, and I don't know whether I brought it up with me, but I received a document that the City of Falls Church was doing on this very issue. They wanted to raise money for a new high school, and they were trying to figure out how they would be able to afford it, and if they built it, and it was $120 million, which is generally what a high school costs anywhere. We built one in Charles County for that amount. And so it was benchmarked, and it showed the council members when and if they would need to raise taxes based on current projections. It turned out, as I am told, that they built the high school and they didn't end up having to raise taxes, but you made that decision knowingly, and the community knew you had good data to benchmark your decisions. So I have a pretty good idea of what you can do here, and it's nothing that I haven't done before. I've been in a city where I took a job in Annapolis as city manager during the Great Recession and found some really troubling things when I took it over, and nothing was taken off the table. We had to privatize a service, solid waste pickup. We had to do all our enterprise funds to make sure they were paying for themselves, and we had to restructure all our debt and made it through to a better place, because the other alternative would have been insolvency.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. So, is it?
Yeah.
Can you hear me? Yeah. No. Let's go in there. Might project. All right. So I have a question in regards to public safety. So a lot of times when people think of Charlottesville, they think strictly of August 11th and 12th and think that our city has to mainly be saved or kept safe just from white supremacists. However, there's a lot more to it, as I'm assuming that you know. So can you talk to us a little bit about how do you see public safety as a whole? Told y'all. I'm sorry.
Yes.
Yes.
Three's a charm.
Test.
We won't put all four.
Can you hear me? It must be down here.
Maybe you're
Can you hear me? All right.
there.
Of course, it would be mine that gives us the most trouble. So for those who, no, I think it has to be right here. I'm not touching it.
Maybe you're in a dead space. Why don't you take my seat, sir? We'll just switch.
Somebody's got a finger on the button every time you speak.
How's this?
Yeah.
Thank you, Kathy. Somebody's messing with me. I know you. All right, so I will speak loud. Is that okay?
Yes.
All right. Some of y'all is messing with me, but it's all right. All right, so in all seriousness, Charlottesville, oftentimes when people think of us, they think, as of late, just August 11th and 12th, and that is the totality in regards to what we need for public safety. I'm assuming that you know that public safety encompasses much more than that. So can you talk to us a little bit about how do you envision working with our police department to keep communities safe, specifically vulnerable communities safe, our fire department, and what's your vision for public safety as a whole?
Thank you. Yes, I think I've certainly done my research on the community, and I've heard podcasts on the community, and I really truly believe, and it's certainly my function, is to make sure that the 45,000 people of the community and the businesses associated with it have their services provided. Mine's cutting out too, so. So, my vision, and I'm also aware there's been some turnover in the police department. And there isn't any simple solution to that. What I am aware of and what I have done in my career with both public safety being both fire and police is to make sure you have the best people in the job, that they interact well with the community, and that you provide transparent data to the community when they need it. And this is day in and day out, not for a situation. I have been in communities not dissimilar to here where there has been turnover due to a variety of different issues, whether it's take-home cars or community relations boards or any of the above, or pay equity. And there aren't always simple solutions to it. In the city of Annapolis, we had the kind of the same issues, and we often found we were losing our officers to neighboring communities. The one thing that we did work hard on, and I saw successfully in the two other communities I was with, is to make sure that we benchmarked our pay with the other communities around so we could retain people and make sure that we were competitive all the way around. But beyond that, I couldn't agree with you more that the job, this job, your job, and public safety's job is to be engaged with the community and provide day in and day out safety for the residents that they feel comfortable with and don't feel like they are a victim.
All right, and the final question, we just would like to discuss healing from and confronting institutional and structural racism. How would you tackle that in Charlottesville, and what would you contribute to our healing and reconciliation process?
Well, I think it goes both to the last question about the situation that happened in August as well as day in and day out. And I've worked in communities very similar to Charlottesville in racial makeup, diversity, inclusion. And the way that I've been able to address it, and I think quite successfully, is in honestly and transparently engaging the community to get feedback to see what we need to do to provide services, provide information to the council members or commissioners that will allow them to do their job, whether it's the analytics necessary to make financial decisions on housing, or to provide monies for the right makeup of departments. And I'd mentioned earlier that I'd done some analytics on your finances, and that's really what my job is, to provide you that kind of information and that kind of tools. I have successfully, in the city of Newport, helped to champion and facilitate, through a strategic planning process, a Hope 6 grant that successfully redid an entire part of our public housing to provide safer, newer, these were World War II era barrack homes from an old base, and also provide opportunity for home ownership. We worked very closely with Rhode Island Housing and within our own community to make sure people weren't being displaced and had options for housing. In terms of economic development, most recently in Charles County, we brought in the Economic Development Small Business Administration representative from Howard University and the District of Columbia to be our economic development coordinator. And he worked very closely with the community in developing a strategic plan and then an oversight committee of the community that would work with him in an advisory capacity, because our county was, during the period of time that I was there, became majority minority, and the minority community, particularly on the business end, felt like it wasn't being engaged and having the same level of opportunity. So I think there's a variety of ways you do it, and I think that I have been successful on all levels. The last part, and I think perhaps the part I enjoy the most, is making sure that the people I work with and the people I hire are representative of the community and provide a face and a person that the community feels comfortable and feels that they too are included and are not left out in the decision making. And that's been a big part of my career success.
Can we do a little bit more time? And so I was just, sorry. Hoping we talk about community relations, which we kind of started off with. Obviously, we're situated in a community that shares the space with a university as well as a county, as we as an independent city kind of reside in that county. Can you talk a little bit about your experience with those types of relationships?
Absolutely. In Annapolis, 7.5 square miles with 40 some odd thousand people, 2 universities within one university, one college, St. John's College and the Naval Academy. And then Anne Arundel County was the county surrounding us, and we were also the state capital. So I had a lot of many different situations of trying to engage what we call town and gown relations with the universities, providing opportunities, helping us. One of the big issues we had in Annapolis was tax-exempt properties, and having to engage. St. John's was kind of small, but the Naval Academy, and helping us fund projects, or the Naval Academy Stadium, and the impact that had on the community. With Anne Arundel County, most of our issues had to do with the growth of the county around what used to be the dominant city. And we had the majority of housing authority homes, and we also had the only public transit system. So a lot of the work that we had to do was to get them to help us with public transit, and sometimes we succeeded and sometimes we didn't. And then with housing as well, to make sure that housing opportunity was provided throughout the county itself. Rhode Island was a little different. The counties really didn't have any standing. The county was really the state. The state is the size of a county. So our relations were really more on the state, local level, and we had Salve Regina University there, as well as the Naval War College. So in both of those instances, the relations were very ongoing and direct and very similar.
And just in closing, really an opportunity for you to share anything that you feel like you haven't had a chance to share with our public. And obviously you didn't go through your resume before, but if there's anything you would like to share just relative to your background that may not have been covered.
I think not really. I mean, the one thing that I do want to say, and I think that anybody in my position needs to be good at, is working with people. And whether it's the community, whether it's the council, and whether it's the people that you work with day in and day out. And one of the things I think I'm really very good at is that level of true, sincere relationship. And I would just like to read something very briefly that one of the people I worked with in Charles County gave me on my way out. And I have it, sitting next to my computer at home. But I think it kind of sums it up, and I'd like to leave you with that thought. And it goes to quote Maya Angelou: "People will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel." And then Ruby Barnes, the employee, and she'd be blushing if she knew I was saying this. Then she said, "How true. I hope you realize what a wonderful, special person you are to me and everyone. I will never, ever forget you and how wonderful you made our workplace and with our laughs together." And I think that's important when you're in leadership, is to be able to connect with people and leave them feeling that you are a genuine person and you really care about them. And that's who I am. Thank you.
Thank you. Take a couple minutes break before we transition to the next candidate. All right. Y'all ready? Moving right along? Yes. Dr. Richardson, thank you for joining us. So on the onset, we're just going to get started with just a few minutes. You can give us an overview of your background and why you're qualified for this position, as well as what really kind of made you focus on Charlottesville as one of the places you'd like to be.
Thank you, members of City Council and the audience. Thank you for having me here in Charlottesville. My experience started back in the city of Richmond many years ago now, where I got the opportunity to work directly with the City Council as well as with the various departments and the city manager on various capital projects as well as other programs within the various districts. I utilize those experiences to move on to become an assistant city manager in a smaller community where I could better enhance and hone my skills. And from that, I went back to the city of Richmond to become a deputy director of public utilities, because that was one of my main focuses, is to be able to understand the revenue generating side of local government. And from that, I went on and did a succession position where I'm currently at now in DeSoto, Texas, where I am the city manager. I went there to be the assistant manager for nearly 2 years until the city manager retired and I moved into that position. And from that, we've been able to do some phenomenal things. One of the big things that we've been able to do is reduce crime over the last 7 years, reduce the tax rate as well as stabilize it over the last 8 years, as well as increase our bond rating from a AA minus to a AA, and then also to bring in some professionals with the necessary expertise and talents to ensure that we would be able to manage our budgets in an efficient and effective manner. And we've been able to do that over a number of years. And today, where we sit, we're very successful in terms of our overall operations and our public services. The residents are very proud of those. So what brings me here today is basically, I looked at this opportunity as a person would come to that wanted to make a difference. Wanted to come to the community to be able to look at some of the overall strengths and weaknesses and look at ways that we could provide avenues to move things forward within the city. I know we talk a lot about here and throughout my interview process was about race relations, working with underserved communities as well as the business community, and working in collaboration with the county, the school district, and the other agencies. So I think with my overall experience and my successes throughout my career, I could bring that to the community and try to bridge the gap in terms of also the relationships with the council and the workforce, and to try to help to build the morale of the overall workforce. So that's why I thought that it would be a good idea for me to apply and to be a part of this community and try to help to move the community forward in terms of the progressive growth and development throughout the community.
All right, thank you. Please discuss the importance of building relationships with community members. In the past, what have you done to build those relationships, and do you perceive any challenges with building relationships in our community?
Well, I always tell people I look at it from the preliminary to the definite. I like looking at it from the perspective of things that are very minor to things that are in the middle of the road and things that are very complex. But I think, too, bridging that gap is being able to communicate with the community on different levels. But I always say when things happen in communities, you always want to start from the youth. And I always say starting between the grades of 6 to 12, where you had that engagement with them, and then also moving on to the university level and have that engagement, as well as the engagement with entrepreneurs and local business owners. And I think that can have a considerable impact in terms of the way you operate and do business, because as you know, with today's youth, technology drives everything. And they know a lot more things than we'll ever know, and by the time we get to it, it'll already have happened. So the main thing is not only that, but also to engaging the public in all aspects. And I always talk about this too, because most people, they talk about low to moderate income communities and being underserved. What we want to do is make sure that they're served just like any other community throughout the city of Charlottesville. And that's something I've been able to do and been very successful with that. And that's also inclusive of the different organizations that you have throughout the city, whether it's Black Lives Matter or other organizations that may be in the community. I think that we have to be very inclusive of everyone that's in the community and make everyone feel like this is home. The main thing that I try to look at all the time is, you know, like I always say, the engagement of those in 6th to 12th grade and then those in colleges. We want to create an environment where those folks, whether they graduate from high school or graduate from college, they'll want to come back to our community. And that's the only way that we actually build a great community, because you're bringing folks back that have lived here, who have got their education here, and they can be the ones to work in our businesses and different things like that, which also expands upon the issue of economic development. Companies aren't going to come if you don't have educated and experienced people, as well as those who don't have the education and don't have the experience, but we can work more with workforce development in terms of providing them with opportunities for them to grow and for them to be successful, not only when we have new construction projects, but also be the folks that are there when you talk about doing RFPs and RFQs and being able to be a part of those various projects within the community.
Thanks. Wanted to ask you about the topic of transparency. Great interest in this community, experience with heightening the transparency of the governments that you've been involved with. What do you think you might want to bring here?
One of the things I've been able to achieve in the state of Texas is the State of Texas Transparency Award. Our budgets and everything of that those sorts are online. You can see our expenditures on a monthly basis. Also with transparency, when we talk about police and those other areas, being able to provide the community with that information, not hiding anything, provide them with the statistics and everything else that is requested. But also, too, number one, as I like to say, too, you know, we can do that, but when it deals with juveniles, that's one thing that we will have to hold back on. But for the most part, you know, it'll be transparent. I'll meet with different HOAs, be in the community, meeting with different organizations, trying to understand the issues that are happening within your various communities. I want to know it, and I want to be able to resolve those matters. You know, if I'm the city manager, I'm accountable for what goes on within the workforce. And the way that they provide your public services. One of the things that we've been able to also do is to provide the community with information pertaining to different projects that we have going on in terms of timelines and different things like that, so that everyone knows where things are. Because as I always talk about, we want to make sure that everybody's served in the community, regardless of what community you live in. You'll be able to know exactly when certain projects are going to be moving forward, or any project delays and things like that. And I think transparency is the key to anything nowadays, especially in local government, to provide the community with the information that they are requesting. And I think that's very important, because we're working off of your tax dollars, and I think that you should be privy to all the information that you know, that we have within the city. But the main thing is to focus on making sure that the employees understand what the community wants, and then being able to provide that information in a timely manner. But I just want to make sure that you understand that transparency is one of my top priorities and always has been.
Thank you. So I'm going to ask you a couple of questions in regards to public safety. A lot of people often think that when you hear Charlottesville, we've become a hashtag of sorts in some ways, and public safety to us is synonymous with August 11th and 12th and defending ourselves against white supremacist attacks. But as you know, there's a lot more to it than that. So can you describe kind of what is your vision and your philosophy in regards to public safety, specifically as it pertains to our police department, our fire department, and community and so forth?
Yes, thank you. That's very important in today's society, dealing with police and the issues that may arise from public safety. One of the things I've been able to do in my community is to divide the city up into 4 regions, and through that we have something we call community policing. The folks in the community knows who their captains, lieutenants, and sergeants are within their given regions. And through that, we're able to have that, what we call eyes and ears in the community, to be able to discuss anything that's happening. I've had nearly a 6 to 7 year reduction in crime rates in the city of DeSoto because of that. And not only that, it's because of leadership. We need to talk about leadership. If you have a strong leader in that particular department, I think you'll be able to move things forward. And that's not just police, but that's also in all the other departments in the city. And I think that there should be more engagement. What I have my folks do in terms of the directors is have them go to the different HOA meetings on a weekly basis when the communities come together to meet, to have someone at those meetings. And also, too, I meet regularly with folks from the communities, from the various communities that we have in DeSoto to talk about key issues. A lot of things that most cities don't talk about, we talk about. We talk about policing in the community. We talk about transparency. We talk about housing issues. We talk about economic development. And from those meetings and the things that the community members are requesting, are looking for, our next meeting, we usually bring some type of feedback to them to basically explain what we have done or what we're planning to do, and give the public a timeline on that rather than keeping them in the dark in terms of when things are going to get done.
Thank you very much, and thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me.
Our community is extremely attractive, and it attracts investors and buyers who can afford any price of housing, all of which inflates land values, raises assessments, and yes, tax revenue. Yet despite these raising revenues, we need to spend more on affordable housing, schools, infrastructure, and we find ourselves needing to raise taxes. Have you faced this situation before? How will you assess this situation? What are some ways that you think we could use to lessen these tax burdens while still meeting our obligations?
Yes, and I'll first start saying that I'm the type of manager who's not going to overpromise and underdeliver. I'm going to give you the straight facts to ensure that you know where we are financially and be able to do those things, as well as working with the city council on those issues, and then being able to really understand what you're able to stomach in terms of an increased tax rate. Because I dealt with the same issue as when I first took over as city manager. Valuations on properties were going up, as well as the tax rate is supposed to be an inverse reaction. And with that, as valuations go up, property taxes should go down. But I think that takes considerable time, effort, and understanding of the budget to manage it and to be able to prioritize these various things, as well as we talk about the comp study. We talk about where we're going to place these various items. We have different meetings in the community to talk about capital projects. What do we want to see in the community over a certain period of time? And that's one of the things that we've been able to do, is basically budget and strategically plan. Now, a lot of times you'll see cities, they'll go out for a bond for the total amount of the project, but you can't do your necessary drawings and construction in 1 year, but you don't raise the tax rate to be able to do that. So you strategically plan that in terms of, if you know you're going to do your preliminary architectural design work, you'll do that in the first year, construction in the second and third year, but you strategically plan that along the way instead of going out for all the debt. And I think more so with that, if it's good, solid planning, but you're meeting with the community and being honest with folks about what you can do and how you can do it, I think you have more the ability to do more, because a lot of times, I always say, we say we want something, but we want it done tomorrow. But we know that's unrealistic without raising the tax rate so substantially that you push out people. And that's what we want to make sure, that people who live in this community, they stay in this community. And a lot of times, you see development, and it comes in, and then, you start to see valuations go up substantially. We don't really want to do that. We want to make sure that people who are in the community, they're able to stay. And I always give a good example of that is when you go through Alexandria, you see all these nice houses, then you see public housing, and then you see all these other nice houses. But they're still within the community. It's like one of those things where you just drive past and not really notice it. And, I know that Charlottesville is growing leaps and bounds, and I think that could be the same thing that could be here. But I think everyone should be included within the community and not put out.
Got to pass the mic down.
So let's discuss healing from and confronting institutional and structural racism. How would you tackle that in Charlottesville? What would you contribute to our healing and reconciliation process?
Thank you, Mayor. I think one of the things that we need to do is be open, upfront, honest, and really discuss the key issues. And as I mentioned before, you know, I look at all those levels, 6th to 12th grade, look at university, look at all the other aspects of it, and being able to go out and talk about these issues and really, really have that dialogue. I think maybe, and I call it the 3-point program. When we talk about policies, we're talking about the practitioner, and we talk about the last P, and I'm forgetting right now. But the main thing is that, you know, when we look at the overall policies that we put in place, we want to make sure that those policies are in place that doesn't adversely impact one ethnicity from another. We want to make sure that when we do these things, we take into consideration the people in the community, allow them to have, that's my third P, people, and have them in the community, and to be able to discuss those very issues, and to have that open dialogue, and to be able to represent that. But I think, too, we need to have ad hoc committees that are within these various communities and be able to discuss those things and just be open and honest about it. One of the things we do in my community is something called Dining and Dialogue. We have a board that gets together and talks about different things, whether it's race-related, whether it's dealing with capital projects, whether it's dealing with future bonds that we want to go after. But being able to do that, but also have these meetings of different folks within these various communities get together, you know, 4 times a year to be able to discuss those things. And then from that gives us more information pertaining to what needs to be achieved and what needs to be done throughout the community. And I think that's of paramount importance if we could do that and have that dialogue here, but also make sure, regardless of what status that a person has in the community, that we're dealing on all those levels and being able to go out and speak to those different communities. And as I always tell people, you know, a city of 49,000 people, you can basically touch everybody. Everybody knows who you are when you go to the store. So with that said, you know, I'm unlike many city managers. You know, if you have an issue, I may be the one knocking on your door and you're saying, who's that? Oh, it's the city manager. But that's the type of person I am, because I want to make sure that, you know, we are communicating on all levels and that you understand that I do have that open door policy, and we'll have those discussions. I think that's the key for us to be able to move the city forward.
So I might just touch on a couple of things that we've already touched on some. Going back to the community relations more broadly, we reside in an independent city that is surrounded by a county, and we also have the University of Virginia, which we share this region with. Can you just speak to your experience with building those types of partnerships and how you can take them to the next level with us?
My experience with that, you know, I had the experience in Richmond, working with the college universities there in the city. Also, too, you know, working with the counties there, and also in Texas. But we do a lot of work with the counties in terms of utilizing those tax dollars that we do pay to the county as far as infrastructure projects and things like that, which will help to defray some of the tax increases that you may receive as far as future infrastructure issues and things like that, and also other programs, even health and human services, those type of programs. And utilizing the county as well as other agencies to be able to provide the necessary resources to the community. And what was the other part of the question? I'm sorry.
I was just about experience with working with like partners like a university and a county.
Yeah. And right now, one of the things that I wanted to do, because I believe that if you have a workforce, you want to have an educated workforce. So what we've been able to do is work with the local college, University of North Texas at Dallas, and allow our folks to get bachelor's degrees. And that reflects some of the areas that they get the business degrees from the University of North Texas, Dallas. And what we're trying to do is create that well-balanced, highly educated and experienced workforce so we can always improve. Number one is on our public services that we provide, but number two, to create that succession planning within the organization. So if someone does end up leaving the organization, we have that backup plan where we can bring someone else into the community to be able to do the job that was being done. But you know, that's one of my big key items, is making sure that you know, the employees are very focused on what they do and are capable of doing it. Because many times you see the workforce and you have folks who are in positions who shouldn't be in the positions, realistically. But just because they were there and being able to fill the gap, they're in those positions. But we want to make sure that we do have people that are highly qualified and experienced to take on those various matters and to move the city forward without overstepping the boundaries of their budgets and different things like that. So yes, back to your question, as far as the university, counties have a lot of experience with that, and also working with state and federal agencies as far as with grants and different things of that nature.
And then just in conclusion, if there's anything else council has, just want to give you an opportunity to share anything that you feel like you haven't had a chance to share with our public.
No, I think I've shared everything, or if I haven't shared anything, the newspapers have. But the main thing is that, you know, I'm a dedicated public servant. I started out in the city manager's office and I worked my way through. And one of the key things that my first city manager, Dr. Calvin Jameson, told me when I was city of Richmond is you're only as good as your last project. So that always helped me to stay motivated in terms of continuously try to improve what I do day in and day out. And I know that there's a lot going on in the community in terms of understanding, you know, the community development as well as economic development, as far as the issues with the workforce and how we interact with the public. But I've been able to, over the years, kind of quash those issues that really impacted the community where I'm at now, in terms of getting out and really understanding the public, talking to people, having an open door policy, and really understanding what's going on in the communities. Because anybody can be city manager and sit in the office and do nothing. But for me, you know, I'm a manager who manages by walking around. And I want to know exactly how our employees feel. I want to know exactly what's impacting their day-to-day operations and where that we can move forward. But, you know, it just doesn't take, you know, me as city manager, but it takes the community. And that's what I want to be, engaged in the community on a day-to-day basis and really understand. Because, you know, I'll be the one that lives and works here and do all the other things and be involved with the community. And I really, you know, thank the council for allowing me to come and to be one of the 3 finalists for this position. I think the city of Charlottesville has a great future and a whole lot of potential, but it just takes everyone working together to make sure that that happens. Thank you, everyone.
So we'll just take about 5 minutes and we'll reconvene for the last candidate. All right, we'll just keep it rolling. Give us some more flexibility on the back end of this time frame. So the third candidate that we're introducing is Ted Voorhees, and we'll just start off. If you could just kind of give us an introduction, why you're qualified for this position and why specifically you're interested in this position in Charlottesville.
Well, thank you very much. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for coming out tonight. It shows a lot about your interest in your community. And I know there are also people watching online, including my kids, so I'll get all the advice that I need when I get home. Thanks for watching. This facility is wonderful. This is a great example of the opportunity that Charlottesville presents for its citizens. It reminds me a lot of the Holton School in East Durham, where we have multiple uses in a historic structure, and it's really a way to come together. So I feel comfortable sitting here. So a little bit of orientation about me and why I'm interested in the job and why I think I'm qualified. So I'm an Army brat, lived from the West Coast to the East Coast, a lot of different communities, seen a lot of different things, and kind of always wonder, why does one community do things this way and why does another do it that way? We live in a great country, diverse populations, diverse ways of doing business, and that's what created my general curiosity about how government works. Went to college in DC. My first government job was at the Pentagon. That is the smallest fish possible in the largest pond possible. And so I began to ask questions about, was this where I wanted to spend my career? And I remembered that I'd had some experiences as a student representative on the school board in Fairfax County and working for the Park Authority, and said, I remember feeling like there was a connection to the community when I was in those positions. And so when an opportunity came to work for a member of the Fairfax County Board of Supervisors, I took it. And to this day, I can go back to Springfield, Franconia, Route 1, and go through neighborhoods and see where we made an impact. We helped people retain value in their property through some redevelopment efforts on the infrastructure. We helped solve flooding problems. We helped add bus routes. We created mobility and accessibility to jobs. We protected neighborhoods from the impact of certain construction projects. So, I see those things, and that really that kept it going for me. That was the hook, and so I've been in local government ever since. So after a stint with Fairfax County, 4.5 years, my boss retired, and I had to decide, did I want to be in politics, which is what he was, or was I interested in the administrative side? And I chose the administrative side. People braver than me are involved in politics. And I was looking at making it a full-time career. So my first town job was the town of Bowling Green. Everyone knows where that is, right? Off I-95. It's Carmel Church and Bowling Green. That sign's been there forever, since I was in high school, I think. So I worked there in Caroline County for a couple of years before I had an opportunity to be a city manager in North Carolina. 4.5 years in the city of King outside of Winston-Salem. A couple of years as assistant city manager in Wilmington. Anybody been to Wilmington? Riverwalk? Great community there, historic community. A community that also has done a lot of work to reconcile with some of the significant racial and equity issues from its past. The 1898 Commission was working when I was there, and the 1898 Memorial was designed. There was a design competition when I was there. From that setting, I went to Durham, 10 years there, deputy city manager. Great city. I'm a tourist, so Bull City worked out great for me, and a big fan of the Durham Bulls. So really had a great time there, and worked with Duke University on our downtown revitalization. and I'm going to wrap this question up because I know we want to get to others, but that certainly was a great experience. About 4 years in Fayetteville, Fort Bragg, another city of over 200,000 population, transit, airport, lots of the types of things we have here. Then to Powhatan County, been there just about 2 years, and I'm excited to bring performance management and some work on some of their development challenges as Richmond grows west. So that's a bit of my history. I have 4 children. My wife teaches in the public schools in Powhatan County, and I am excited about the opportunity here in Charlottesville to partner with the council, with the community, with the staff, to take this great community to even higher heights.
Okay. Thank you. Please discuss the importance of building relationships with community members. In the past, what have you done to build those relationships? And do you perceive any challenges building relationships within our community?
Well, absolutely. There are challenges. I think there is usually a bit of an opening with a new manager, a new council member, a new president of the university, a new corporate leader, a new community leader. I think I usually assume good intent. I'd like to start out with an expectation that people are here for the right reasons, and I certainly am. But it takes not too long for folks to realize, whether you're a person of action, whether you're a person who listens, whether you're a person who supports and lives transparency and truth. So I believe in those values. I would say that a good example of some of the ways that I've tried to engage with communities, I'll just go to Fayetteville as an example, where we took our town halls to the community. We would have Facebook streaming town halls so folks could ask questions from home when it was inconvenient to get out. Bringing department heads out into the community. I know you do similar type things here. In Durham, we had coffees with council. We would, at budget season, try to make sure that all parts of the community had an opportunity to provide input to the process. But there are numerous boards and commissions, citizen volunteers, and I felt like my responsibility was to be responsive to them, to be available, and those are the normalized structures, but we also have to work in an ad hoc way when we have issues that don't kind of fit conveniently in a box, and we need to understand that we work for the people. We are here to give voice to their concerns and to find ways to partner with the board, the staff, the resources, our neighbors, our nonprofits, the county, and figure out ways to move forward, because we are going to be strongest together.
Thanks. And I'll say what I told you before. I have to leave at about 5:30 for a family matters, but I'll be following up with my colleagues and appreciate you being here. Question of transparency. It's a major interest with this community. Many communities would like to know a little bit about what you've done on transparency in the past and your other roles and what you might think about bringing here in this job.
Sure. So I'm going to talk about 2 examples real quickly. One example of where I was in a community where the feeling was the transparency wasn't good enough. In Durham, we were aware, I was aware that we did not have a significant enough capital improvement program to deal with our needs. We had a number of community facilities that were falling behind in terms of maintenance, some cultural facilities that were like that, some parks and recreation facilities, roads, utilities. So the way to address that was going to be to have a bond referendum. So that's essentially telling people we're gonna ask you to pay more taxes, and we're gonna spend a whole bunch of money because we haven't managed our assets very well. That's a tough conversation to have with the community. We had that conversation with a citizen team that I organized, and the answer was, we don't trust you, we're not going to vote for this, and this is a bad idea. So we said, we get it, I understand. I worked across the organization to reorient our capital projects process, to build in some additional citizen transparency structures. So we had a citizen advisory committee for developing the plan, and we had an implementation advisory team that was consisting of community project delivery professionals such as engineers, architects, finance folks, landscape architects, and community involved persons. And so what we essentially laid out there is we were going to, from the beginning, project development, to the end, implementation, going to have additional oversight so folks could see how the money was spent, could see how we were developing the projects, and then we committed to improving our project delivery process within the departments that deliver projects, like the Public Works, Public Utilities, General Services. Went back to the citizens a year later and said, here's what we've done, what do you think now? And the answer was, well, we think you mean business now, we're willing to give this a shot. Let's talk about a proposal. We brought $80 million worth of projects forward. The committee looked it over, they spent a couple weeks, they came back and they said, we think you need to do $110 million, and we'll back it. So eventually, not too long thereafter, it became a bond referendum in eight different bonds. A citizen committee took the reins to advocate for it. As city employees, we're not allowed to advocate, we can only educate. And all 8 bonds passed by similar strong margins. And we delivered a package of projects that was fairly equitably spread across the different types of functions and geographically across the city. And I think that was the beginning of kind of getting the flywheel going, that Durham was back in business. We were going to be driven by citizen concern, and we were going to turn the ship around, get the chip off our shoulder that we'd been sort of carrying around for a number of years. I think it was an example of how adding citizen input to a process adds to transparency, and we continued to build on that model going forward on a number of projects. I think that's probably a sufficient answer at this point. I said I'd give you 2 examples, but I'll leave it at that.
Thank you. So my question pertains to public safety. As we've talked a great deal about, when we think about Charlottesville, some people think about roughly the events of August 11th and 12th from 2017. But as you're well aware, and our community knows firsthand, is that public safety includes much more than just those dates. So can you talk to us a little bit about your plan and your vision in regards to how you will interact with our police department, our fire department, the community as a whole, specifically as it pertains to public safety?
Thank you. So I've spoken about this a little bit already to the council and to some of the committees we've had interviews, so this will be a little bit repetitive, but there is a nationwide struggle to change the culture of policing in America, and there are good models out there for what I think we as Americans want our police agencies to emulate. The model is called the 21st Century Policing Model. The Department of Justice has put that out, and a big piece of that is to move the mindset, the culture of policing away from the warrior mentality to the guardian mentality. And I think all the law enforcement officers that I've come in contact with over time, they're here to serve. They want to be good. They want to do the right thing. If we set up expectations that the guardian mentality is where we want to go, and that they are rewarded for that, and that there's no modeling bad behavior that, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, it's still okay to do some other things, then they'll move in the right direction for the most part. And there's always a few folks in any organization who need to maybe seek a different type of employment, and we try to identify those folks and help them do something different. But I've seen significant positive movement toward this new model in 2 large police departments in North Carolina. Very specifically, the things that happened in Fayetteville, North Carolina, new police chief. Every officer got fair and impartial policing training. Every officer got unconscious bias training. We deployed the most, or to the entire department, body cameras to the largest department at one time in the state. And we really had a difficulty with statistics around consent searches. Black motorists were being pulled over and consent searches were being implemented at an unjustifiable rate. And what was this doing? This was creating an amazing level of, an appropriate level of animosity. It wasn't helping us to build a community relationship. It wasn't helping us to solve anything. So fortunately, through the great work of Chief Harold Medlock, who came from Charlotte, who I brought in, we changed that mindset. The mindset was now, we're here to protect. We're not here to harass low-income people because they have a burnout light. That's not really a safety issue. Speeding, dangerous driving, that's something we want to stop, because that could harm anyone. And when we have the other type of violations, really that's the DMV's issue, or it's okay to pull people over for other things and then say, while you're here, you might want to get the registration taken care of. You might want to take care of that light, but we don't need to add another layer of burden to people's lives. We need to be on the right side of people's lives. And, well, guess what? People began more and more to appreciate the department. They began to open up. We began to take ownership of our patrol territories instead of asking the lieutenant, what happened at such and such an address? So I don't know. I'm the night shift lieutenant. That's day shift. Instead, it was, no, we changed the whole paradigm so lieutenants were responsible for real estate. That's my part of town, and I want to know what's going on, and I want to have the relationship with the people who live there, because I'm going to help protect that part of the community. So we developed those kinds of relationships. Ultimately, the Department of Justice recognized Fayetteville as one of the top 6 communities that's doing policing, community policing right, because we made those paradigm shifts, and it's an ongoing thing. You have to keep modeling that good behavior and making sure that officers are rewarded for that good behavior. And one other thing, in that model, support for police officers is in that model too. You cannot forget that they are people too, and they are under a lot of stress to move that paradigm, but at the same time be effective and deal with things that most of us don't have to deal with. And it's difficult to be in that position. So we need to provide support for them so that they can feel like they're part of the community and adapt and change, knowing that we want them to be successful.
Thank you, and thank you for coming here. Our community is extremely attractive, and it attracts investors and buyers who can afford any price of housing, all of which inflates land values, raises assessments, and tax revenue. Yet despite these raising revenues, we need to spend more on affordable housing, schools, infrastructure, and find ourselves needing to raise more taxes. Have you faced this situation before? How will you assess this situation? And what are some ways to lessen these tax burdens while still meeting our obligations?
And that's really a classic problem for successful communities. On the one hand, we know there are a number of communities that are not in that enviable position. They don't have the power of a growing economy. They don't have the power of strengthening real estate values. And so they're actually at more of a loss to deal with the many challenges of a diverse community, with a changing economy, with an interest in lifting more people. When you have an unsuccessful economy, you're really strapped, and you're having to look externally for resources. When you have an economy like Charlottesville's, then it's more of a question of how do we protect folks from rapid change from the norms that work for their lives? How do we have the right conversations? How do we use the tools that a municipal government has effectively, whether it's inclusionary zoning, whether it's density credits or bonuses, whether it's land trusts, whether it's land donations, whether it's performing the role of a developer or partnering with community development organizations, accessing federal funds, state funds, bringing in folks who use tax credits effectively. There's a menu of options, and so it's our role to try to find the best tool for each particular problem. In the development world, every site's different. Every strategy isn't effective in every situation, in every neighborhood. So you really need to listen to the people. You need to work with your local developers. But sometimes you may need to bring folks from outside of town who've done a particularly interesting project somewhere else that you want to bring those ideas into the community. And so I will not claim to be an expert on housing redevelopment activities. I've worked in that sphere, though, and I think what I would say is helping the council to recognize which tools are appropriate when we don't have those tools and how to go get them, what kind of capacity building we can do for ourselves and for our partners. That's the role I would play, and that's kind of the work that I think I would be contributing to Charlottesville as we work through those problems neighborhood by neighborhood.
Thank you. Let's discuss healing from and confronting institutional and structural racism. How would you tackle that in Charlottesville? What would you contribute to our healing and reconciliation process?
Thanks for that question. So just came back from Greenville, South Carolina. I'm a member of ICMA, the International City County Management Association, and Dr. Ron Carley, who used to be the county manager of Arlington, is now a professor at Old Dominion, has a great course that he rolled out for us at ICMA Southeast on unconscious bias. And I know some of my colleagues, as I knew a little bit about what to expect, but I knew we were going to go in there and say, I kind of know what my unconscious biases might be. But after going through that instruction, it just really unrolls so many more things about, wow, I never really thought of whatever this, that way. So, the more that we can spend time in a dialogue, in a non-threatening way, a non-problem solving sort of way, just helping people to access truth by being exposed to realities, I think that helps us. I think when we're forced to solve a specific problem and under a lot of pressure, sometimes people then will be more resistant. Now, sometimes we have to do that because we got a lot of things to work on, but I think that all communities can benefit from more space, more time, more familiarity, because familiarity breeds truth. When you spend more time with folks and you get to know them as human beings, it becomes easier, well, I'll flip that around. It becomes a lot harder to assume bad intent, because you know them as a person and not as an interest. So I think one of the roles that a good local government can play is to create many different opportunities and venues to work through whatever issues the community wants to tackle. Much of it has to be put forward in creating an opportunity and not forcing people to do anything in particular. We need people to come willingly, and good examples breed other behaviors. I enjoyed during the 1898 reflection period in Wilmington, being part of a study circle on race that was held at the University of North Carolina, Wilmington, with a future African American City Council member who was a teacher in a segregated school in that community. I did not have that perspective coming into that meeting. It was very eye-opening to me, and I couldn't say enough about just creating those opportunities to connect with people, their experiences, and how much that can impact the community as a whole. And I think we can be a great facilitator of that kind of opportunity.
We're going to go back to just general community relations, and you spoke about the citizens, but we also sit in an independent city that's surrounded by a county, and we also have university that kind of straddles both the city and the county, so it would be helpful just to understand your experience with building those relationships.
So slightly different scenario in North Carolina, where cities are parts of counties geographically, and we had different responsibilities. But I did spend some time in Virginia before I went to North Carolina, so the constitutional officers and the independent city structure is familiar to me. But what did we do? And so throughout my career, building relationships with other municipal governments when I was a municipal government, with counties when I was a municipal government, was just a standard behavior. So whether that meant in Durham, having the alternating Durham City, Durham County meeting where we just meet to meet. And then we have an agenda if we have things to solve, but otherwise we're going to meet anyway because we want to keep that dialogue open. We want to be able to assume good intent with our partners on the county side, and familiarity, as I've said several times, that helps to develop the political capital you need when times are difficult. I know the current Albemarle County Administrator, County Manager, Jeff Richardson from North Carolina, great guy. I'm sure you're all enjoying, having him in the community. So I would see that as, a pretty good fit there. Other things that I've been involved with are creating an emergency management compact in the Winston-Salem region, where our different town governments would assist each other whenever we had some sort of natural disaster type event. So we had tornadoes in the Madison-Mayodan area. We had a tornado in Clemens. All the small towns pitched in and sent crews. Big snowstorm in Southern Pines. We sent a snow plow 5 counties away to help, because that's what you do to help your neighbors. In the Richmond region, I'm part of the regional managers group. We get together and try to do problem solving on a regular basis, and I'd certainly be part of that here. And in Fayetteville, that was also something we did on a regular basis with interlocal agreements, cooperating on school and parks maintenance, 911 issues. I also convened a local managers lunch roundtable every other month. So those are the kind of structures that I can bring to the table as a manager. They're not particularly difficult to do. You just have to do them, and you have to be sincere and present. And there's work to be done, when you're together. But that's at my level, at your level, and at the citizen level. There are many other opportunities, and we have to continue to support boards and commissions. I like to bring boards and commissions to the council to keep the council updated. I'm sure you do that already, and we'll help them with scorecarding and performance metrics if they're not doing that already, because we're doing that with the staff. We ought to be doing that with them as well.
And just in conclusion, if there's anything that you feel like you haven't had the chance to share with our broader public that you'd like to share at this point.
Sure. A lot of different things I could say. I want you to know that this is not a community of great potential. You already are just a great community. People are concerned about you, though. Around the country, people know what you've been through. I hear it. People are sending me emails and messages, making little jokes about what happened, and it's unfortunate that the name Charlottesville is synonymous with a tragedy. But do not despair. I know you're not worried about it. You will prevail. You will get through this. I know everybody takes a different amount of time to heal through any kind of event. I know a lot of people are rooting for your success. I certainly hope that I can add some of my experiences to help move the organization forward. I feel like I have a significant amount of experience in helping leverage staff's success in aligning strategic planning and performance metrics. I've done that in Fayetteville, worked on that in Durham. So that's where I'll do a lot of focus. I'll be working with the board to find appropriate opportunities in the community to engage. But we know what Charlottesville is really all about, and we're not going to let anybody from outside the community bring us down. We were going to continue to be the great, loving, caring place that we always have been. And if you feel that I can be a fit, I'd love to come and contribute. And regardless, you will find the best fit, and I'll wish them well. And I appreciate being given the opportunity to participate in this process. So good luck.
And thank you again. And thank you all for spending your time with us and being here this afternoon. We will have all the candidates. They will be out in just a few moments, and they'll be floating around, and you'll be able to ask them questions and anything that you didn't hear up here, anything that you have more interest in. I would ask you just to be mindful that we have a room full of people who will be trying to ask them questions too. So just make sure that you give other people the opportunity also. And again, we appreciate you being here.
We have the feedback.
Yes, and we have the feedback sheets, and they'll be. We'll let you know where where the feedback sheets will be, but we do have them, and so you can fill those out too before you leave. And if you're leaving and not staying for the second part, you could probably come up towards the stage, and we will have an answer maybe by the time you get here. We appreciate all that you do, and know that we can't do it alone. And in terms of where our community goes next, it's up to all of us to help create that community, and I appreciate your time.